Hello, everyone. This is Marge from Tales from the Catalogs, and I am so excited to be welcoming you to our second episode for season 2. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I loved writing and making it, and you may be able to hear a familiar voice who, spoiler alert, actually voiced the same character back in season 1, episode 2. But apart from that, if you haven't already, I invite you to follow us on our social media pages if you want more Tales from the Catalogs content. So we have our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter under Amidst Posteriors. And pretty soon we'll be having our TikTok account up. So if you want more content, watch out for that and follow us there as well under Amidst Posteriors Official. Some content warnings for the episode. There is a hefty amount of jump scares in this episode, so if you're someone who gets scared easily or is very jumpy, I suggest you skip this episode and wait for our next one. But if you're up for the challenge, go ahead and listen through. Disclaimer: this is a work of fiction. Any and all names or places that match real life are purely coincidental. To your right, there is a door. Once you cross this threshold, you shall weave your life with the threads of your unbecoming. It will unfold before you, grasp you, and you have no choice but to hold its darkness. For in darkness, we have reason to find the light.
Good evening, listeners. This is DJ Ellie, your kachika sa umaga and your spooky storyteller sa gabi. You are listening to Haunting Nights, our All Souls Day special program, only here on 104.2 Keeper Radio. The time is now 30 minutes after 10 o'clock. It is November 1st, 2022. It is a Tuesday, and it is currently All Souls Day. I hope everyone is keeping safe during the Undas season, Expect traffic and road blockages, especially with routes leading to your local cemeteries. Be sure to practice fire prevention measures as well, so we can all honor our loved ones safely. For tonight's Haunting Stories guest, we have Mr. Oliveros, a local resident from our very own Santa Lucina, with a compelling spooky story of his own. Mr. Oliveros, thank you for accepting our invitation to go live with us on air.
Thank you for having me, DJ Ellie.
For our dear listeners, we had announced 2 weeks prior that we were accepting story submissions through our social media page. And with the countless stories we received, Mr. Oliveros was one of the submissions that caught our eye, and we chose to feature his story in our program tonight. You are listening to Haunting Nights. Our All Souls Day special program only here on 104.2 Keeper Radio. The time is now 42 minutes after 10 o'clock. This time check is brought to you by Pulcritudo Papilio Skincare. True beauty lies within. Be kind to your skin and be kind to yourself. Please be aware that this episode may contain triggering content and may not be suitable for all viewers. If you are sensitive to the topics of suicide and death, please listen at your own risk. Mr. Oliveros, we truly appreciate your presence with us here tonight, and we are more than grateful that you chose to spend your Tuesday night with us here on Keeper Radio.
The pleasure's mine, DJ Ellie. My husband actually convinced me to tell this story, and I am someone who believes in keeping my personal experiences private. However, he was able to woo me into submitting this story, and reassured me that this story would honor my daughter in a way, especially if it came from me.
Yes, I have read in your submission that you've lost your daughter last year. It's already a big step for you to join us tonight to talk about it, and I know it can be a sensitive topic.
It's quite alright now. I decided to be here, and I am ready to share her story. Well, rather the things that happened after she died.
Well, to start things a little more lighter, you could tell us more about Grace and what she was like as a daughter, as a person.
Where do I even start? There's so many points to discuss.
Maybe we could start with your relationship together. How was it, and how did you see her as her father?
Grace once told me that she pictured my life if I never had a kid. A thought experiment, she would say. I had once told her of my dreams to travel the world after I graduated. I wanted to see the world in my picture books when I was little. I wanted to walk in lands where history was made. The little kid who traveled the world at night under his blankets with a flashlight while his parents talked over their divorce. I wanted to make him happy. However, when I had Grace, I seemed to have forgotten about the little kid under the blankets. His big dreams turned to whimsical daydreams. His picture books were closed neatly and returned back to their shelves. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was making this little girl the happiest kid in the world. And I failed both of them.
How can you say you failed, Mr. Oliveros?
No one tells you about the dread of seeing your own daughter in that state. No one tells you about the despair of wanting to have made it 5 minutes earlier. No one tells you about the midnight drive in an ambulance from the hospital to the funeral home. No one tells you about the deafening silence after putting your kid 6 feet under the ground. No one told me anything. No one prepared me for any of this. This little girl and her big dreams, I want to see her grow up and become a woman who lived them. She deserved to have lived those dreams. All I have is a reminder that even her own dreams will remain as dreams. Just like mine. It wasn't fair. It honestly wasn't goddamn fair. Ever since her service, I haven't slept without her teddy bear. I had, in my familiar way of knowing who my daughter was, asked the embalmer if he could bury it with her. She never slept without it. Not since she got it when she turned 4. The embalmer gets back to me the next morning. He tells me that he had the gut feeling that the teddy bear would be a better reminder of her than any of the pictures, candles, and teeth boxes in her room. He, in his own words, said that in some way, Grace didn't look pleased when he tried to lay the bear beside her. It had to stay with me. I thought it was ridiculous.
Did you keep the bear?
I kept it. Every night since then, I have not slept without it. The embalmer might have been right about this gut feeling. On the days I felt reminded of her absence, her teddy bear would always be there to look me in the eye, and I would feel less alone. In the most fantastical, whimsical sense, the bear gave off a sense of comfort. It was a piece of her that stayed with me when I would think of how I now have nothing of her. It reminded me of her. So familiar, so close. It was like she left a piece of herself in the bear that reminded me of simpler days. Days when she would come home from school. Days where we would eat breakfast together. Whenever I looked at the bear, I felt that strong presence of her still lingering. It was as if she never left. I preferred it that way for the longest time. And then I met John.
I'm assuming your husband.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Tell us more about John, if you'd like.
John was, well, he was lovely. After almost a year and a half of living in silence in the house, I started going out again. A few friends would reach out and invite me to gatherings. They would go out of their way to plan trips, take me out for coffee, and bring me to social events. Weddings, christenings, birthday parties. I met John at one of my schoolmates' weddings. He works for the media and was one of the people who documented our friend's wedding. He spilled the wine on my trousers when we were seated together, and the rest was history. It's with him I realized that time continues to tick and everyone continues to move on. It is with him that I realized I have never left that night. It's with him I realized I didn't want the world to leave me behind. He gave me that damn smile, and I suddenly didn't want to be left behind. Ever since then, he would frequent my house. Sometimes I stay over at his place. Months of spending so much time together, little things of his bled into my life and mine to his. It felt like we were slowly settling into each other. Pieces of him scattered all over my house, all over me. The restless nights where I would feel the loneliness creep in, he would hold me. The days when I would feel so empty and jaded, he would do everything he could to make me smile. I didn't know there would be so much color back in my life after Greece.
Well, in times of grief, We do need people to help us get through it. I get this a lot from my listeners, but it is absolutely okay to be sad about loss or failures. At the end of the day, it is up to us to decide when we want to get better and bounce back. I feel like John was a message or even a gift sent by the universe to help you gain that color back.
Yeah, he sort of is. I didn't think I'd be living life again. When we finally agreed that he could move in with me, that's when things started to change. At first, I thought for the better. He was such lovely company. There was so much warmth that filled the house compared to how it was a year ago. Then it slowly started to grow a little darker.
I'm guessing this is where the more spooky supernatural things happened. But before we continue, we would like to thank our sponsors for tonight's program. Firstly, we would like to thank to tonight's radio program. And for our second sponsor, we would like to thank the Santa Lucina for keeping things neat and orderly so that our operations can function. And last of our sponsors, we would like to thank Pulcritudo Papilio Skincare. True beauty lies within. Be kind to your skin and be kind to yourself. You are listening to Haunting Nights, our All Souls Day special program, only here on 104.2 Keeper Radio. Please continue.
One night, John woke me up tiredly. He said something was touching his feet. Something cold. He'd assumed it was my own foot that had brushed against his, and groggily told me to put my feet back inside the blanket. Yet my feet were inside the blanket, and I had been wearing socks the entire night. Then our stuff began disappearing and reappearing in unlikely areas of the house it should have been. John's phone, that was on the dining table, found in the empty guest room. My keys on the shelf were found in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. The bear? It was the last thing I expected. The bear on my bedside was found in Grace's old room. I haven't been in that room since John moved in. It happened frequently then. I thought that it was just a simple case of humans forgetting things in the short term, from time to time. I took the bear. I put it back in my room, and for a while, nothing had happened. At least to me. John would often tell me about the cold chills and this feeling like someone was watching him in the room. The first few times he felt it, he couldn't pinpoint where it had been coming from. All he knew was that there was something in the room here with him. And most of the time, he felt it when he was alone. My house doesn't really have ghosts. Not prominent ones at least. And not ones that I knew of. I'm not a spiritualist or a psychic, but ever since we started living in the house with my first wife and our baby, there was really nothing paranormal about the home. However, when John woke me up one night and told me that the bear on my bedside table was suddenly by the foot of our bed, I knew something was wrong. Something was in this house with us.
When you started feeling that something was off in your home, what was your first course of action?
I had called a local priest at the time to conduct a house blessing. I had told the priest of the house's history and my family, especially my daughter's death a year ago, so he would note of it in his prayers. He suspected that the unrest in the house might have been remnants of her spirit, and that a simple prayer for guidance and acceptance would help her finally move on. He also suggested that I should start to accept the loss of my daughter, that if I unconsciously held onto my grief, it might have been the reason why her spirit was not fully rested. I believed him. For a time, I thought it was enough. After the house blessing, I decided to start packing the rest of her things. I needed to move on with my life, especially when it was directly in front of me. John was a dear and helped me in moving her things. We cleared out her room, moved some of her things in the attic. I took her bear in my room and included it in one of the boxes in the attic as well. I thought it would be a good way to start letting her go. Out of sight, out of mind, they say. But I wasn't really moving on. We didn't feel the hauntings for months. About half a year, I would say. We thought that it was all settled and the worst had been over. I didn't have dreams of her. John didn't feel like anything was watching him in the room anymore. We were at peace. We were settling, and he proposed. He proposed sometime during the holidays, and it was the happiest I had ever been after Grace. It didn't start almost immediately again. Far from it. It was tiny, unnoticeable things becoming prominent after John's proposal. I would walk in random rooms in the house, and it would smell like her. Her perfume, the same vanilla candy perfume she buys at the grocery store. It had been faint at first, and it wasn't something that I minded, considering there will be some sense that sort of sticks to your home. It just became normal. I would catch a whiff of it in the living room, by the stairs, sometimes before I leave for work. Then there were days it just got stronger. You know how sometimes you would catch a whiff of food somewhere and you sniff it out trying to figure out where it is? That was not the case for this. John and I would be seated at the living room after dinner, and it would suddenly just start smelling as if Grace's perfume bottle, the entirety of the bottle, just spilled in the room. Like when someone sprays air freshener a little too thickly. That's how strong it was. And then I had the dreams again. I dreamed of the bear, knocking on the walls, the door, on my chest. I would see this figure, faceless, blurred out, reaching out to me. I would dream of her door, staring right at me. I would hear the loud banging of hands against wood. My hands on her door. Banging, screaming, begging her to let me in. I would wake up feeling the emptiness again. Sometimes, these dreams bleed out. That was what scared me the most. I would wake up in the unholy hours, in cold sweat, every time those hands reached out to me. I would wake up feeling empty. John would tell me I would groan and mumble in my sleep, as if I was struggling. Then, that one night, I dreamed of her bear again. It wasn't knocking on anything. Not the walls, not the door, not on my chest. I could see it, its back facing me. Staring at the empty wall in the attic, I stood in the dream, still scared, anxious about how quiet it was. The bear doesn't move. I didn't know how long I had been standing there staring at it, but then it craned its neck backwards, and instead of hearing the rip of fabric, I heard bones. Bones cracking as it craned its neck to look at me. Its eyes were hollow, the mouth stitched shut. Then it was followed by the sound of cardboard box ripping itself apart. That's when the cold hands in the dream sprung out and suddenly grabbed me by the throat. I felt it. I reacted to it. It wasn't just some dream. It really felt like the dream bled out. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The only thing I could do was struggle, all while I was asleep. John didn't know what to do at the very moment. According to him, I stiffened like a statue with my hands around my throat, as if I was choking myself to death. He had to shake me awake, and it took a lot of effort before I finally came to. I had bruised my own neck in the process. I was sent to the ER that night to make sure I didn't break any bones or have any serious injuries. Yet it felt all the same. I woke up feeling empty. John said it was the most horrifying thing he ever had to witness me in. He said it felt like something else took a hold of me. Something sinister. I told him about the dreams. Grace, the bear, the things in her attic. I told him about my grief, my guilt, how I couldn't save her in the time. How I couldn't save her in time. If I had known. Sorry. If I had just known. If I had just asked her. Maybe I wouldn't have lost her. The pain is immeasurable. No words can even tell me how painful it is to lose a child, one you really loved. We went back to the attic. I looked for the bear. I saw most of her things there too. Her first bike. The one she fell over from when she took off her training wheels the first time. I found her old pictures, school recitals, awardings, her Halloween costumes. I found her school bag still filled with her textbooks and supplies, expecting she would still go to school the day after. And then I found the bear, collecting dust in one of the boxes with her pillows and blankets. Remember when I said every time I woke up from those bad dreams, I would get this feeling of emptiness? When I looked at her bear, I felt the same emptiness tenfold. I didn't know what came over me. I had completely taken her out of my life, out of my sight, in hopes that I would accept that she is gone and I can move on with my life. Yet instead of accepting it, I had forced myself to forget about her. We made sure her things were returned to her room. I cleaned up the bear, and it hasn't left our bedside since. I'm grateful John was patient enough to stay with me in those times, going as far as asking me if I could include him in my visits to Greece. He hadn't met her, but John cared about me enough to be there when I was carrying this loss. To be remembered wholly as a person is almost an impossible thing to do for someone. But to remember someone by the little things go a long way.
And there you have it, listeners. Thank you so much, Mr. Oliveros, for sharing the story to our listeners tonight for this special program. The time is now 30 minutes after 11 o'clock. This time check is brought to you by Pulcritudo Papilio Skincare. True beauty lies within. Be kind to your skin and be kind to yourself. This has been Haunting Nights. And this has been DJ Ellie, your kachika sa umaga and your spooky storytellers sa gabi. Good night, listeners.
Hi! So you've made it to the end of Season 2, Episode 2. That was Haunting Nights. Just kidding. I really enjoyed playing that DJ. But I am so glad that you were able to make it through the end of the episode. What are your thoughts? Did you like it? Was it scary? Did you actually get scared at the jump scares? I hope so. But if you want to leave your thoughts, you can definitely go ahead and follow us on our social media pages. You can definitely leave some comments there, share some love, spread the word that we are a small local podcaster team who makes horror podcasts based on local, well, not really based, but inspired by local stories, local Filipino stories. But I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I really hope we get to see you on the next one. We will be uploading every 2 weeks on Thursdays, so watch out for updates on the page, and we'll see you next episode. Bye!